Welcome to the channel, everyone. I'm Casual Binge, and in this video I'll be showing you a build that is one of the first of its kind. This is the first time FromSoft has added instrument weapons to the Souls-like franchise, and as a musician I had to get to work on a bard build right away. It was a bit of a grind to get all the gear and have it dropped to my new character, so shout out to all my friends who helped make this video possible. That being said, this build's purpose is to stay at a very low level and assist new players with Market, the first boss of the game, and invaders along the way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the stats. So in this build, I had to achieve the balance between keeping my level low enough to be able to be summoned in for the first boss fight, as well as have my stats high enough to be able to wield my equipment and also have a good chunk of health and stamina. This is a good look into starting any new build. A good general rule of thumb before you face the first major boss of the game is to have at least 20 vigor, at least 20 endurance, and whatever else stat-wise to wield your equipment. This is essentially a faith build that uses instrument weapons as well as Flame of Frenzy incantations for madness buildup. Because let's face it, what musician isn't at least a little bit insane? Our first weapon of choice is the Envoy's Horn. It is a hammer, so it swings like the mace and does blunt damage, requires 10 strength, 12 dexterity, and 16 faith to wield, and it does a split between physical and holy damage. So it turns out this weapon is actually a lot of fun to use. It swings a lot like the mace, like I said before, which is a weapon that I'm really used to, and the weapon art is just pretty much out of this world. You blow into it and make this keyboard synth trumpet sound and launch bubbles at your enemies. This is surprisingly good for farming and spacing people in PvP. Next up, we have the Frenzied Flame Seal. This is a sacred seal used to cast incantations, and it gives a 20% damage boost to all Frenzied Flame incantations, which is primarily what we're going to be using for this build as we are doing a Madness build-up along with a Musician build. So while the Sacred Seal is a super late game item, the Flame of Frenzy incantation is not, and you can pick it up fairly early on in the Weeping Peninsula. I would recommend this to anybody who's doing any sort of faith build, as it does Madness build-up, which will leave your target vulnerable for a time, and it does a ton of damage. This is pretty much going to be your main spell for tanking bosses. And last, we have the Heart Bow, which I consider to be the main weapon for this build. So it takes 9 strength and 9 dexterity to wield, and its Ash of War is Barrage, which allows you to fire arrows very fast at enemies. This bow doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but the trade-off is that it can be fired very quickly, so therefore it can build up status effects quicker than most bows. So I chose to use poison and bleed arrows, that way I'm constantly draining the enemy's health and constantly chipping away with bleed damage. For Fashion Souls, I'm wearing the Altered Festive Hood, Nomadic Merchant's Finery, Godskin Apostle Bracelets, and the Traveling Maiden Boots. And I went ahead and dropped myself the Erdtree's Favor +1 and picked up the Green Turtle Talisman. I wanted to take the last part of this video to show you guys what it's like to summon in as a bard for the Margit boss fight, and also talk about some ideas that I have for the potentials of what could be in the future for bard builds in From Software games. So imagine having an entirely new stat like creativity or music or something like that, and instead of using a staff like you would for a sorcery, you would use a musical instrument for some type of bard melody sheet music. This is something that's underutilized in a lot of games, as a bard has always been around as a class for D&D, so I don't understand why the bard build has never really made its way into a lot of mainstream games. And I think, like in this game's case, it has a really good structure for casting spells, and it would be super easy to just implement, just add instruments to the game, and like I said, collect different spells, and maybe you can only play spells specific to that instrument until you get the golden fiddle at the end of the game, or, just having a stat that would complement other stats, I think, wouldn't really intrude on the game, and it would make it a better sort of environment to play. And it would add a interesting style that really has not been done too much. So, anyway, that's the end of this video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.